Welcome, everybody, to Write Out Loud, the podcast about writing, storytelling, authorship, and all of the creative arts that we love so dearly. Just like I love the buoyant, the blissful, the animated, the bouncy, the glimmering, and the enthralling Christina.
I'm going to run out of things to say back. I mean, I can only say I'm going to throw him as the thesaurus so many times. Thank you.
Well, of course. And we are joined by a very, very special guest this week. It is somebody that I think you're really going to enjoy. This is a little bit of a different approach when it comes to writing that you might not be expecting, and I think you're going to love it. Our very special guest is none other than Sean Vigue. He's one of the most followed yoga, Pilates, power yoga, flexibility training, and performance enhancing instructors in the world. He has millions of followers. He's a best-selling author as well. So he's written lots of books like Pilates for Athletes, Power Yoga for Athletes, Pilates for Men, and just really enjoys creating books that are accessible to everyone, regardless of where they may be in their fitness journey, as it were. So welcome, Sean.
Thank you very much, guys. Very excited to be here.
Absolutely. Sean's got a list of really big-named clients that he's worked with. Walt Disney World, Florida Hospital, Anytime Fitness, Orange Lake Resorts, saw Champions Gate, Artisan Park. There's so many. List goes on and on and on. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. What else should we know?
Well, I grew up with your co-anchor, Christina. We are both from southwestern Wisconsin. My favorite place in the world that I've been to so far, other than Vienna and Montana, I think. We were talking about this before. Actually, the first musical I did was with you, Christina, I think. In high school, we did South Pacific and the old high school gym. Now they have an auditorium, but that's pretty much where I started this journey into what I do now with the fitness, the books, the writing the books and the videos and the DVDs and the classes and everything. I started there doing musicals. I started one acts, went to the local university, Viterbo University, as an undeclared. I was going to be a history major and actually decided against that and auditioned for a show called The Miser at Viterbo and got cast in a small part. And I got bit. I was bit in high school by the theater bug, and I was bit in college by that too. I started taking voice lessons, started singing. I never thought about being a singer before. I have to give a shout out to Daniel Wilmot Johnson, the head of the music at Viterbo, who really took me under his wing, who's heard something in my voice one day in chapel when he had me sing a thee. He had never heard me sing before, and I sang it, and he said, wow, what resonance. Took me under his wing. Long story short, started doing a lot more shows and operas in college, started auditioning once I graduated, and spent about 13 or 14 years as a professional singer-actor, long before I started becoming a fitness author and teacher. Theater was my life for many years. That's all I did. I traveled around the country, brought me to Florida. I went to New Jersey, went to Canvas, doing music theater and opera. And as we were talking before we started, so many of the lessons that I've learned about life in general, about relationships, about working with people, about enunciating, about how to project, how to impart information and teach, was all learned in doing professional theater.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's interesting because, of course, that's where I know you. I know you best from those musicals that we did each summer while we were in high school, the one act plays, what did they call it back then? Star Search?
Yes.
You'd be with the other guys doing the stars.
I have them on tape. I have them in my phone, all those videos, because they're so, I think about that stuff all the time.
Yeah. So it really made sense to me that years later when we reconnected, once you were fully into the Sean Vigue fitness era and doing the books and all that kind of stuff, that when I went back to your videos, you had like a Les Miserables workout and you were very engaging and very much the Sean that I remembered from high school. So it makes absolute sense to me that this was a natural progression, that you had learned all these things for that. Can you talk a little bit about your transition from the theater to fitness instructor, then making the leap again to books? Then we'll get a little bit more into the writing of the books.
Well, I always liked lifting weights. I started lifting weights between my junior and senior year. I did a video about this. Do you know, I started lifting weights for a girl that was in your class, I think. Can I say her name? Because I mentioned her in the video. I haven't talked to her probably since high school. Becky Milkey.
Yeah.
Remember Becky Milkey?
Oh,
Becky
yeah.
and Renee,
yeah.
they were twins. And
also another Ridge runner.
Yeah. I had a big crush on her, and it got me into lifting weights. I started lifting weights over the summer. In my room, I had 2 dumbbells and a barbell. And I would lift weights every night, like at midnight. I'd go to bed at 4 a.m. I would eat Chef Boyardee ravioli all the time because I wanted to gain weight. I was very skinny. Ate that crap. Well, I can't eat it now. I had it a few years ago. It made me gag, I think, because I ate it so much. But I would work out every day. But I started doing that, and I was so validated because I wasn't doing it great. You should work out every day like that, do barbell curls and all that stuff. But I went to band camp, and everyone noticed I had started working out. That was very validating to me. I always worked out in the high school gym, did stuff like that. It wasn't, I started doing theater. And once you start doing a lot of West Side Stories, you do a lot of really physically active shows. You got to sing, you got to dance, you got to act, and you're going to do it 8-9 times a week at least. And a lot of the times when you're doing those shows, you're also rehearsing other shows. If you're doing a repertory, which I do a lot, you'll by the end of the summer, you're doing 4 shows in rep, big musicals. And I started taking dance classes because that was kind of my weakness. I was a park and bark guy, they call it. You just park and everything or act. I had really heavy feet. A girlfriend of mine at the time always said, you just have heavy feet. So I started taking dance at Broadway Dance Company with Sue Samuels. I always like to mention her because she would teach dance, but she also would sprinkle in some yoga stretching and a little Pilates. I had never heard of Pilates before. And yoga I had heard of, but we started doing some of that and I really liked it. It definitely stuck with me, so that the more theater I was doing, I started doing more of that body weight kind of fitness, which I'm known for now. I do a lot of strength training. I film it sometimes, but my niche is body weight, calisthenics, yoga, Pilates, stuff like that. We would go to the gym. I would show them weights. I would also show them core work, show them stretching. And then I was doing a production of Fiddler on the Roof at the Actors Playhouse in Coral Gables, Florida. In 2004, I was Fieka, the Russian guy. I always play the Russian guy because I'm blonde. He has a big solo. He romances the third daughter. And we were doing the Russian dance in rehearsals. Where you go down and up, down and up. I'm sure you guys do that all the time. Who doesn't?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Something happened in my lower back. Something popped. And I was out for like a week. I was just laying on the ground. I was 29 at the time. And it really messed me up. They really didn't help me out. I was just laying around. They took out the jump off the table, so I didn't have to do that anymore. I didn't have to do the dance. But anyway, long story short, that's what got me into Pilates big time. Got me into that core strengthening, because up to then you're going off the power of youth, the elasticity of that. And just weaved into doing Pilates. I moved to Central Florida. I'm still doing theater. I started teaching classes. My last book I wrote, the whole intro is about how I got into Pilates, because it's Pilates for athletes, and details how I injured myself in doing that damn Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is such a natural progression. Hearing you talk about it, it's almost like everything up until that point that you got injured was all learning to be who you were going to be, all up until that point, and then it kind of shifts. So at what point do you say to yourself, okay, I teach all this fitness. I teach the Pilates, the yoga, the this, the that. I've got all these. I've got millions of followers. Now I'm going to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
How does writing a book for athletes look like? Like, what is your process? I can imagine it's different than novel writing, of course, but how different? What is it like? What is your
Tell you something. I taught for Disney for about 9.5 years. Their yoga and Pilates guy. I went with cast members, taught all over Team Disney feature. I pulled into Disney University because I did about 4 classes a week there. Pulled in the parking lot there. I was getting out of the car. I looked at my phone. I got an email from Sherwin's Press asking if I'd be interested in talking to them about writing a book about yoga for athletes. I had never thought about writing a book. I was doing the videos at that time. The videos were really successful.
Wow.
I was still doing some theater. I was working with Orlando Opera doing stuff. And I was teaching like crazy. It just went nuts. That's how I was with theater. I just went nuts for years. I get a downtime here and there a week or two, but teaching, I was doing 25, 26 classes a week, throw spinning in there, personal training, Pilates, yoga. And I got the email and I spoke to her, Jessica, that was her name. She talked me into doing the book. I never thought about doing a book like that before. The thing was, they got this idea for a yoga for athletes book, but they needed an author. So this was so great with my videos. I was out there so much. They did all these searches on YouTube and Google. My name kept coming up to the top as far as yoga for men, yoga for athletes, power yoga. So I had that going for me. They never would have found me if I wasn't doing the videos. YouTube is the nucleus of everything I've done up to this point. Not theater, of course, but everything else I've done in fitness and all the little surprises that come along is all thanks to YouTube, because it's always spinning. And there's always all these people with eyeballs, even while we're sleeping. They're still watching them over in Asia, wherever. That was my first major book was Power Yoga for Athletes. That was a great learning experience. A fitness book, I've written a lot of zany short story fiction. It's because fitness and fiction I weave a lot of fun prose into what I write. I like to write the way I speak in my videos. I want to keep it entertaining. It's very movement based. My books are designed for people to get inspired to get up, to move. They're filled with exercises, with sequences, with descriptions, photos, anecdotes, linked to workouts. So it's all about movement. It's definitely a different animal. I do a lot of book signings at Barnes and Nobles and Books of Millions and other. But it's tough because I don't meet a lot of employees that push the fitness books that much. It's definitely a different animal, fitness books. I've been very successful at selling books and also getting a lot of goodwill with bookstores and managers. That's who you want. You want to, chat with the managers.
Yeah.
The Books of Million and Dr. Phillips in Orlando. I go there a lot. She was a runner. So I think she she knew who I was. A lot of them know who I am. Like they've done my workouts before. So that helps. Just they know who you are. So with her there, I was very successful in getting new books in when they'd sell out and doing signings. I think she left to go to a different job with the company. When the new guy was a little different, that wasn't his forte. So you just have to kind of read the room.
That's
so
awesome.
you were talking a little bit about how you write little anecdotes and things to engage the people. So when you sat down to write, did you actually think to yourself, okay, how am I going to be different from other fitness writers, fitness books? Give us a little insight into like putting together the book itself. Do you think of the workouts first?
Yeah.
Do you think of like, how do I get people interested in how to do, like, go into that part of.
When I first started teaching live classes, I had a moment where like, how do I talk? Because I came from a theater background where there's always a script and there's a character and there's a description of that character. So, okay, this character has to be this kind of way. So maybe I'll talk this way. I'll sing this way. It's very specific. So when you're out there just teaching classes, I thought for a little bit, how do I talk? How do I impart knowledge? And then I just thought, well, I love this stuff. So when I teach it, that's going to show. And I never look back after that. So, I write, I know I have editors, so that's good. So I write in my own voice. I write exactly how I would tell you guys this stuff. I like to write anecdotes. I'm a rather random person too. I see things so much in songs and movies and film. Those would inspire me a lot. So I like to, and the publishers let me do it because it's unique. I like to put that in there and it engages people. A lot of people might have misconceptions. I know a lot of people are afraid of me when they find out you teach yoga and Pilates. If they don't do it every day or they're not that aware of it, like, oh, I don't do that. I need to work on my posture. I need to work on this. So I like to break it down and make it very accessible for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I actually write the exercises and workouts. I write those out first. If there's specific exercises, that's what I work on first.
Yeah.
And then everything goes around those exercises. Because in fitness, it's the workouts. A lot of people will say, I can't work out with a book. And I say, well, I hope you can work out with mine because it's all about action.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like hearing your story and hearing how it all comes together, I think there's another sort of vein to this, right? Which I think from a writer's perspective, you think about all of the different maybe hobbies or activities, things that you didn't anticipate might actually benefit you as a writer, right? So as you kind of got in from theater and you picked up a lot of the things that make you really engaging and the things that help you kind of give that presentation that comes with the fitness side of things, right? So that makes your videos more engaging. It makes people want to follow along with you. Like thinking about that from a writer's perspective, there may be some other activities that you didn't think might benefit you as a writer. For example, theater getting into acting could be very beneficial to a writer because you start to study how people behave and how they interact with each other and the ways that they kind of feed off of each other. That can inform your writing. Music, the way that things flow and kind of weave together. So I just think it's interesting that I see that kind of vein run through your story. And that's, I think, a good thing for our writers to think about.
Yeah, I visualize every workout, no matter I teach it, film it, it's structured like a show. You have a warm-up, which is the overture. Then you have the rising action, warm-ups, exercises. You have the peak. Then you have the cool down, the falling action. And then the resolvement, the denouement. I mean, that's my theater background. I did thousands of shows. Yeah. So it has to resolve itself. I see that all the time it's in my head. I've been working on a memoir about fitness, teaching fitness and everything. And I wrote a little bit because it's a lot of instinct for me, but a chapter on teaching, how I teach. I do it all the time, over 10,000 classes, thousands of videos. So it's second nature, but to actually break it down, that's why these podcasts are great, because you actually get to talk about the craft and go behind the scenes of how all of us are thinking and how we all impart knowledge and how we see things visually, whether we know it or not. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too. We spoke to an author whose life, not at all similar to yours, except for one fact, that after hearing your story, you go, of course, this is where you ended up. Like everything prior to this, you know what I'm talking about, don't you, Matt? We had a gentleman on who wrote a political thriller. And prior to that, he was an English teacher. He was all these different things, but every single step along the way, you could see informed him on how he was going to be as a political thriller writer. Even ended up going into politics after being an English teacher, teaching storytelling, teaching writing, all that kind of stuff. You mentioned a little bit ago that you're writing a memoir. So, let's talk a little bit about that. You don't have to give anything away or where you are in the process, but what made you go, okay, I've done the fitness book. Now I'm going to write a memoir.
If you've noticed, if you go to Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, wherever, there's so many memoirs now. That's big time. You have all these people writing memoirs. I don't know if they write them themselves. They probably have ghostwriters, however it is. But so it was a side project. It's definitely going to be a fun exercise because it's going to force me to remember a lot of things. In those almost 20 years, I've done so many things with freestyle fitness, traveled around the world, worked with so many people, taught at so many places, seen a lot of interesting things. It is kind of an interesting field. You meet so many people and some of them are very interested in what they do in class, what they do outside of class. going to fitness conferences, meeting random people, that do my workouts, that I meet quite a bit. So I think there's something there with my voice. I think it would be very entertaining. As far as I don't think it's ever been done before. I don't think any fitness people have written about their experience. I think I could make it very interesting. In the process, it'd be very rewarding for myself to put pen to paper with all these memories swimming around in my head, unearthing them, bringing them out, just making certain reels sometimes as an exercise. If I'm going back, like when I taught at Lululemon or taught over here or did this, there's so many interesting things in there. So I'm going to keep plugging away at it. I mean, you gave me a nice boost when we talked about it because I'm kind of self-employed. So I'm on my own a lot for these things. And some days like, I just don't write it, but if I could get a contract, a publishing deal, that's all the motivation I need. So
yeah, that would motivate you.
I need to do is get a few chapters together, really cohesive, interesting, fun.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
What's been the hardest part about writing for you? Like the most challenging piece, do you think?
I'm a content guy. My hardest part in writing and in everything I do with the fitness, I do too much. I have hundreds or even maybe thousands of videos I've shot that are still sitting on drives and stuff. I write too much in the books, which isn't bad. The last book, the Pilates book, we had to trim about 34 exercises out there. I'm like, this is a book. It's going to be around a long time. It's an object, and I want to cram it. So that's an issue I have. It's easy to pull back. You just take exercises out. Wow. I hate doing it. Pilates is very difficult to write about or photograph because they're exercises, they're moving parts. The Pilates, the last book, the photo shoot took 6 hours because there's so many exercises. And yoga, you can easily do one photo. This is something that will go in the book. The trials and tribulations of doing fitness books like this. Pilates is moving parts. So for one exercise, you can maybe have 7 or 8 exercises. Trying to connect all those together with the right descriptions be just a miserable experience, especially when you're going back and editing and realizing, wait a minute, this doesn't match. So you could really get into some hot water. You might have to go out and shoot some photos again. There's so many photos in these books. We took thousands of photos. So you got to know your sequences. You have to know what you're doing.
Wow.
And your descriptions have to be spot on because you're doing right, left, right leg, left. It's just so many things you're trying to impart in a written word.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to picture this happening. So you go on a photo shoot and you explain to the people what movements to do because you know what's been happening. Are these professional athletes that know how to do this stuff, or are they? I mean, obviously they're not going to be like
the models.
Me,
you mean the models?
You'd have to help me out a lot. Yeah. The people in the photos doing the photo shoots.
The first paperback I did, Power Yoga for Athletes, I wanted to be the main model, and the publisher said no. It wasn't my contact; it was whoever else, the suits. But I'm in the book in the chapter headings, but I recruited a couple people I knew. They worked really hard and they did a very nice job, but it was very difficult for me to sit there during that photo shoot and not do it myself because, of course, I can do that. Let me do that. I know how to do that one. And they did very well. There was a couple, it's just tough. These are tough poses. I do them for a living. I can do thousands of different exercises, that's my job. So that was difficult. Next major book was the Pilates for Athletes. That was me and my wife. So that was great. She did the warm up and the cool down ones and I did the rest. But even she said her part took 4 hours. She goes, that's really tough because you got to get angles just right. You have to get lighting just right. And one little finger, you can't do that with your finger. You have to put your finger down. All these little things that in a video you don't think about. You're constantly moving. People can get a general idea pretty easily, but you got a shot. You got a photo, and that's it. And they have to be cohesive, and they have to look good. You got to look good. She did amazing, but she was exhausted. It's 4 hours of holding these poses and stuff, and then redoing them.
Yeah.
And you want to get your race, It was my book, so I smiled a lot. But, what do I do with my face? What do I do with my hands? You become so acutely aware of everything.
Yeah.
My photographers have been great. My last photographer, I worked at a theater in New Jersey, and she remembered me from that. Her and her friends followed me online. I actually reached out to her because she was a photographer, and she said, I'll come to Colorado. I have friends there. She flew into Colorado. That's where we did it, from New Jersey, and did the photo shoot. She's fantastic.
That's amazing.
Nice.
Well, as you're talking about having to kind of cut out parts, right? Because you're like, I want to get it as chock full as possible. So there's that really solid value in the book, right? People are going to have it for a long time. They can use it, but having to cut those things out. And I think it aligns, as you're listening to this show now, you're thinking about all of the scenes you might have had to cut out because it was just too long for your novel, right? So it's the exact same process. It's just different medium. It's just different materials, right? But it is literally the exact same process. So there's a lot of folks probably out there thinking, oh yeah, I know what that's like.
It's not about me as the author. It's always about the reader. In theater, it was never about me as a performer. It's always about the audience. Some people lose sight of that. They want to make it about themselves, and everything suffers, whether it's the show or the book. Well, I want to write this because I really like this. And that may work, but it's all about reaching the viewer, making it as smooth and enjoyable for them as possible, because you want them to like it. You want them to tell people. You want to sell books. You want to do more books. That's how I've always thought. I don't just, I just want to do one and done. I want to keep working. I want to keep doing that. You want to keep bringing them back. All the great writers keep bringing people back. They have a definite style that people adhere to.
Right. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, speaking of writers, since the majority of our audience are readers and writers are at their desk for umpteen hours a day. So, Sean Vigue, what are some great 5-minute stretches that authors can do that you can get up from the computer? What I'd like to do is, I know you've got some workout videos and stuff like that. What I would love to do is let's link up some of those so that we can reference them on our podcast page. But do you have some great, either stretches or yogas, 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Absolutely. Well, my bread and butter is mobility, flexibility, yoga stretches. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of 10-minute videos lately on YouTube. Those definitely ring a bell with people. That's a good amount of time.
Good.
We can put a lot of stretches in there. There's things you can do right at your desk, but I taught noontime classes at Disney for a while, noontime, and those people loved it. They always told me they went back to work, and everyone says, what happened to you? Everyone went back with so much more energy and focus, just doing, I think there were half-hour classes, going back to their desks and whatnot. And it made them so much aware of their posture, of their breathing, of the need to take breaks. Resting in writing, resting in theater, resting in fitness is so important. Rest gets left out of the equation a lot. And just going for a little walk. I love walking.
Yeah.
I started walking when I was in college. I'd walk in West Salem because my mom always walked, and that sold me on it. I walk at night. One of the most inspiring things I could ever do is go for a walk. So if you're a writer, that's gold. Get outside and look around and breathe some fresh air.
Yeah. Yep. And then I'll go, and then all of the characters start coming in and talking to you while you're on your walk.
Yeah. That's the goal, right? That the characters are constantly talking to each other in your head, and you don't even know what they're going to do sometime in your story. Lee Child talks about that. He really doesn't know. He just starts writing. He doesn't know where Reacher's going to go.
Yeah.
No idea. And he just follows him.
Yeah. He's a pantser for sure. Yeah. One of the romance writers that I've met, Susan Elizabeth Phillips, she actually said she doesn't even know the names of the characters when she sits down to write.
Neat.
I am simply amazed at that. On the other hand, an author that I worked for early on in my career, Suzanne Brockman, would write 50-page outlines before she even sat down to write word one. She'd do these massive outlines, but she knew every nuance of every character going right in. So everybody's got their process.
I watch author interviews all the time. We're talking about how things speak to you. Matt was talking about that. And I mean, several times a week, I love watching author interviews. I get so inspired. I love looking at authors' workspaces. I find that so fascinating how they can create. So I could talk about all the authors because I watch all their videos.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you mentioned earlier that you had written short stories before. Do you have an interest in writing something fiction?
I would. I doodled. I wrote one about a Pilates superhero because I like comic books.
Oh,
But then
nice.
again, I have a problem with starting something and then just, going on somewhere else.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed writing short stories in high school for Mrs. Patsa. I liked historical fiction a lot. Because I liked history. I liked fiction. I like combining the two, working that in.
Yeah.
I was an English major for many years, and I had to drop it, but did a lot of writing. The more I read, the more I want to write. It stimulates the brain. It's like listening to Mozart. You want to, you get all these ideas. When I get a new book deal, I start reading a lot more than I normally do because it gets everything moving. But my problem was I would get great ideas, and I'm just in awe of authors who can write complete novels and have it all tied together. I'm in awe of that because I don't see myself doing that. Maybe I could, but that's a different brain type than I have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, of course, I never say never for that. So keep that in your pocket. But I think it's interesting to hear you say that too, because I also think that feeds your creativity for your other stuff. So it actually does. I mean, it's a little sad to hear that maybe we won't ever get a complete Sean Vigue novel.
I don't know if you'd want that.
But I think it feeds your creativity in other ways. So for me, writing is my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Theater and fitness is your thing. But I have a lot of other things that I dabble in, painting and other creative things that will never see the light of day, but they feed into my other creativity. So I think creative people are that way. They dabble in some things that feed into their real passion and creativity.
I love that. Thanks for saying that, Christina. That's something I feel all the time, but I don't know if I put it into words, but I'm always gathering, whether they're quotes, I have quotation books, quotes from movies, songs. I gather things all the time that have a trigger with me that make me so happy, I want to carry that with me.
Yeah. But it really is that creativity. And sometimes if I'm having trouble with an editing project, like, okay, well, what do I need to suggest here? Or if I'm in one of my writing projects and I'm stumped, I go to something else creative. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the musicals and stuff like that. I try to stay away from the reading aspect because I don't want that to filter in because that's what I'm doing. Cool. So I need to do something else. Like I said, painting, or I do a lot of like creative kind of things together, but it's that creativeness that you're feeding it. And so then when you walk away to do something else or go back to your project, you're full again. The fountain is full.
It's so true.
So
the wheel has to keep turning. And I know right away when it's not.
Yeah.
And like, I just feel blah and dumb and unfocused. I'm not reading, not listening to wonderful music. I'm not exercising, things like that. I'm not being thankful for things or grateful. You just kind of get in these moods and stuff. And it happens. It's part of the journey a lot. You have to have those valleys to have the peaks. I like to be creative, and I get very excited, which is a great thing, but I have to temper that because you can't be excited all the time. You're going to run into walls, and the more excited you are when you run into those walls, they're going to hurt more. So you got to balance it. As an instructor, I'm very good at telling everyone to do that, but I don't do it all the time. I get off, I get moody, I get upset, I get unfocused. But thank God for my fitness stuff, for what I do. I come back to it, and that's definitely my passion. And it's so great to be able to write within that scope also, to write books, include that.
Yeah.
I mean, you were mentioning too, like just being able to go out and take a walk, right? It kind of, again, frees you up a little bit, maybe knocks the cobwebs out if you've been kind of focused too hardcore on your project for a while. Have you ever used, they're called a time to walk in Apple Fitness Plus?
I have not. I've heard of it.
Yeah, they're actually really, really cool. I think you'd like them for that purpose because it is timed so that you go on a walk and you are actually going on a walk with a celebrity who's telling you about their life or their philosophies or what have you. And there's just a whole bunch of them. Yeah, it's really cool to listen to them just kind of, and you hear the sound as they're walking with you. So it's a really
that sounds really cool.
Neat effect.
That's neat. I think we need someone to listen to or talk to blow away the cobwebs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get that fresh air and then keep you a little bit off topic for a bit. So that way you kind of come back refreshed.
Yeah, it's amazing how the author lifestyle we connects so well with the fitness instructor's lifestyle. You might not ever believe that, but they do, because movement is involved, focus is involved, breath, longevity, and long-term focus. And to see a big picture, you have to, when you're writing a book or you're doing videos or teaching class, you have to see a big picture of the whole thing that you're doing. Teaching any kind of class, it's not just a one thing and done. It's something that's always moving and
absolutely. Well, awesome. Sean, it has been an absolute pleasure having you join us today and sharing a little bit of your life and your writing journey. Is there anything else that you'd like to just draw attention to here as we kind of wrap things up?
I submitted my latest book to my publisher. I had an idea for fitness for kids. I have a 5.5-year-old. So it's so much based on my observation. The whole intro I wrote is all about being at the playground with Dane and watching him, how quickly he adapts physically and mentally to everything on the playground. It was such a fun chapter. I've done some yoga for kids videos. I've done very well. So hopefully that will happen. And I have some other ideas for books. I'm constantly creating new videos. I don't have a huge bucket list, but I love creating content. I'm going to keep doing that. And especially doing reels around movies that I love and TV shows that I love is something new I've started doing, and tying it into fitness instructors. I never thought I'd say that sentence before. It doesn't make any sense, but it does to me now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic, though.
Yeah.
Well, where can they find you if somebody's looking to find more of Sean?
The quickest route is my YouTube channel at Sean Vigue Fitness. Think of Vogue, but with an I, Sean Vigue Fitness. And if you're wondering about, what I have, just type my name in the search bar, Sean Vigue, and whatever you're looking for, beginner, advanced power yoga, and it'll come up. I have over 1,000 videos on YouTube. As I said, it's my nucleus. So I have a new video coming out tomorrow morning, a restorative yoga that I filmed up in our backyard yesterday. I can just do it like that. I film outside 99% of the time. So I love to be outside. I don't like being inside. Awesome. I like the wind. I like the potential of being attacked by wild animals. I've been around elk and bear and gators in Florida.
I was going to say alligators in Florida.
They're all around me in Florida.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
We'll link up on our web page where your episode will live. We'll link up to your YouTube, and we'll put some links in there for those 10-minute workouts for writers.
Great.
Absolutely.
I love it. Thanks so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. I love that you guys talk about the writing process. Yeah. I never thought I kind of stumbled into it, but it's so interesting. I find it so fascinating. Thanks for letting me talk about it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. I mean, this was fun for me just to reminisce a little bit about the past and all the musicals and Star Search and all that kind of stuff.
We did the Kids in the Hall sketches at Star Search. That's what we did.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, thanks again, Sean, for joining us. Absolute pleasure having you here. And listen, thanks for listening to Write Out Loud. Keep writing, keep sharing your voice, and keep creating. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@writeoutloudpod.com or Christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.